Imagine a place where only 2.5 miles separate the past from the future. This isn't science fiction, but the reality of two tiny islands in the Bering Strait, Big Diomede and Little Diomede. Big Diomede belongs to Russia, Little Diomede to the USA. They are so close that you can see houses on the other island from the shore. However, what makes this place unique is that the international date line runs right through here. This is not just a formality. Here, the time difference between the 2 points is almost a full day. Big Diomede lives in tomorrow, while Little Diomede lives in yesterday. Travelers and bloggers often talk about how you can jump through time, traveling into the future or the past with just a few hours' walk across the water. Of course, it sounds dramatic, but technically it's true. All because of a line drawn for the convenience of international navigation, which just happened to end up right between two countries that were once ideological adversaries. Visually, the islands are almost identical, rugged cliffs, snow, and fog. But in essence, these are two worlds, two calendars, and two political systems. What lies behind this short distance, and why is it so hard to overcome? Neighbors just 4 kilometers apart from each other. When people think about the distance between Russia and the USA, they imagine thousands of miles of ocean, icy expanses, and endless taiga. In reality, there is a place where these two powers are separated by only 2.5 miles. In the Bering Strait, there are two islands, Big Diomede, which belongs to Russia, and Little Diomede, controlled by the USA. On a clear day, you can see the houses on the other island. It would seem easy to cross this distance, but history, politics, and natural conditions make it almost impossible. Until the mid-20th century, these islands were part of a single cultural space. Local Eskimos freely crossed the strait, exchanged goods, celebrated common holidays, and in winter walked across the ice. The ice was a sturdy bridge between families, and boats served as a means of communication during the summer months. However, after World War II, the situation changed. The Cold War began, and the border, which had previously been almost symbolic, turned into a strict boundary. The Soviet Union relocated the entire population from Big Diomede to the mainland and stationed military personnel there. The United States increased control on Little Diomede. Today, these 2 miles symbolize not only geographical proximity, but also historical division. The islands have become a rare spot on the map where one can simultaneously see the past and the future, neighborliness and isolation. And although the distance between them seems laughable, crossing it is not easy. Cold wind, icy water, and strict regulations make the journey nearly impossible. Such a small distance, yet so many stories and secrets are hidden between these two worlds. A border in the ice. Until the mid-20th century, both islands, Big and Little Diomede, had no strict border. Local Eskimos freely swam across the strait, walked on the winter ice, visited relatives, exchanged goods, and celebrated together. The ice was a sturdy bridge between the islands, and boats served as a safe means of travel in the summer. However, after World War II, the situation changed. Relations between the USSR and the USA deteriorated, and those 2 miles became a symbol of global confrontation. The Soviet Union relocated the peaceful population from Big Diomede to the mainland and stationed military personnel there, while the USA tightened control over Little Diomede. The border, which had previously been almost nominal, turned into a strict boundary. The Ice Curtain. That's what this stretch came to be called, reflecting an analogy with the Iron Curtain in Europe. For the people of the region, this meant the loss of freedom of movement, the breaking of family ties, and the impossibility of maintaining their usual way of life. The 2 miles became an insurmountable distance, where geography gave way to politics. Even with a strong desire to make the journey, people faced harsh natural conditions. In winter, the ice became dangerous. The water in the strait is cold and turbulent, and any violation of the rules could lead to serious consequences. Today, the border in the ice is a symbol of an era when human closeness could not overcome political barriers. This place still serves as a reminder of how easily everyday life can be disrupted by geopolitical games, and how important the freedom of movement is, a freedom we often take for granted. A swift swim towards the enemy. In the summer of 1987, American swimmer Lynn Cox accomplished an extraordinary feat. She swam across the strait between Little Diomede, which belongs to the USA, and Big Diomede, controlled by the Soviet Union. The distance was only about 2.5 miles, but the water temperature was barely above 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Lynn wore no wetsuit, just a swimsuit, and was accompanied only by local residents in kayaks. The swim took just over 2 hours, and every second was a test of endurance, willpower, and courage. This swim became more than just a sporting achievement. For politicians and the global community, it turned into a symbol of possible rapprochement between two countries that had been adversaries for decades. Gorbachev and Reagan officially recognized the swimmer's feat. And the media called this event a sign that even in the midst of the Cold War, there are bridges between peoples. People on both sides of the strait looked at her with admiration. Some saw it as a display of human strength, others as a hope for reconciliation. Lynn Cox's act showed that borders are relative and human courage can overcome almost any obstacle. She didn't just swim across the icy strait, she gave the world proof that the distance between countries and ideologies can be bridged through courageous acts. This swim is still remembered as one of the symbols of the end of the tense era of the Cold War. The island that was lost. Until the mid-20th century, indigenous peoples lived on Big Diomede, mostly Inuit, who had inhabited these harsh rocks for centuries and depended on the sea, hunting and trade with the neighboring island. They traveled by boat in the summer, walked across the ice in winter, exchanged goods, and visited relatives. Life here was hard, but familiar. However, after World War II, the situation changed. The Soviet authorities decided to turn the island into a military outpost, close the border, and relocate all the residents to the mainland. Their fate was decided without their consent, and a military base with observation posts and a weather station was established on the island. Since then, Big Diomede has remained almost uninhabited. For 9 months of the year, it is shrouded in ice and fog, battered by strong winds, and temperatures drop to extremely low levels. Supplies of food and fuel are only possible by air. Helicopters fly rarely, and communication with the mainland is limited. Life here is sustained exclusively by the military and scientists. The slightest mistake in planning or a delay in supplies can make existence on the island critically difficult. This place has become a symbol of how political decisions can destroy a familiar way of life and cut people off from their roots. Today, Big Diomede is not just a territory. It is a monument to history, isolation, and human resilience. It serves as a reminder that even the smallest patch of land can become the stage for global processes, and a distance of just a few miles can separate entire generations. Life on the edge. The American Little Diomede is one of the most remote settlements in the United States. Only about 80 people live here, mostly Eskimos, the descendants of the region's indigenous inhabitants. Their village, Diomede, consists of a small number of houses situated on the rocky slopes of the island. There are no roads, no trees, and for 9 months of the year everything is covered in snow, ice, and thick fog. Getting here is difficult. There are no cars, helicopters fly rarely and only when the weather is favorable. Electricity is generated by diesel generators, water is collected from mountain springs and stored in tanks. The residents live almost completely autonomously. There is only one store. Goods are limited. Food, clothing, fuel, and household items are delivered by plane or helicopter from the mainland. Mail does not always arrive on time, and the internet works via satellite connection, which is often unstable. Despite this, people maintain their usual way of life. School classes work in public services, crafts, and hunting. They preserve traditions, collect seabird eggs, and make souvenirs that are in demand on the mainland. Life on Little Diomede is harsh, but the residents consider it their home. Every day, they can see the Russian Big Diomede just 2.5 miles away, but crossing that distance is almost impossible. The harsh environment, difficult conditions, and isolation make the island a unique example of how people adapt to extreme living. A school with a view of Russia. On the American Little Diomede, there is a school, a small but important part of the island community's life. The students are mostly descendants of indigenous Eskimos. From the classroom windows, there is a unique view. Just 2.5 miles across the cold water lies the Russian Big Diomede. For the students, it's not just a landscape, but a vivid reminder of neighbors with whom they once shared a single community. Teachers come on contract and stay on the island for the entire school year, and the curriculum includes both standard subjects and traditional knowledge, fishing, hunting, and survival skills in the Arctic. The school has a library, a computer lab, and a gymnasium. The educational process is organized so that children receive a full-fledged education despite the isolation. After classes, they help their families take part in village life and learn independence from an early age. At school, a sense of responsibility and connection to cultural traditions is fostered. For the island community, the school is a center of communication, learning, and support, as well as a place where children learn to understand that borders on a map may divide but cannot destroy the memory and culture of the people. Life for school children on the island is harsh, but it creates a unique experience. Daily observation of the Russian island, knowledge of the history of division, and an understanding of the value of small human communities. This education shapes a special generation, accustomed to an extreme environment where every action requires effort and attention, and the neighbor seen across the strait remains a mystery and a symbol of the past. The price of isolation. Life on Little Diomede is extremely expensive and requires constant preparation. There is only one store on the island and its supplies are limited. Groceries, clothing, fuel, and household items are brought from the mainland by plane or helicopter. The weather often interferes with deliveries, and supplies can be delayed for days or even weeks. Every bottle of water, bag of flour, or liter of fuel comes at a high cost. Electricity is provided by a diesel generator, and water is taken from a mountain spring and stored in tanks, since laying pipes under the permafrost is nearly impossible. The residents have adapted to the conditions by organizing village life around the school, post office, and medical clinic. Many people are engaged in traditional crafts, hunting, and gathering marine resources. Products and souvenirs made on the island are in demand on the mainland. Despite high prices and limited access to goods, the residents consider this their life and their home. They preserve cultural traditions and develop survival skills that help them cope with harsh winters and strong winds. Every day on the island is a balance between limited resources and the need to sustain life in isolation. The small community lives as their ancestors did, but modern conditions make this an extremely difficult challenge. The high cost of living, infrequent deliveries, and harsh nature turn a simple distance into a serious ordeal, and the short route to the neighboring island remains almost unreachable. A letter across the ocean. On Little Diomede, the post office plays a special role. There is no regular delivery here, and every letter or package is an event. The post office is a large room through which all communication with the mainland passes. In winter, when the strait is shrouded in ice and fog, planes and helicopters arrive extremely rarely. Letters can take weeks to arrive, and packages even months, making every delivery of news a long-awaited event. The post office also serves as a means of communication with the outside world. Through it, you can send a fax, a phone message, or access the internet via a satellite connection. This system allows residents to keep in touch with relatives, order goods, and stay updated on events on the mainland. Without it, life would be almost complete isolation. Every message, every box of food and goods is a small piece of the world that arrives on the island. Postal routes and deliveries are planned carefully, taking into account weather conditions and the state of the ice. Any mistake can lead to delays of weeks. Residents know connection with the outside world is not just a convenience, but a vital necessity. The mail is a channel of information, a means of exchange, a source of hope. It connects the isolated community with the world, reminding us that despite harsh conditions and political restrictions, communication remains a bridge between people separated by just 2.5 miles of cold strait. The last frontier of the Cold War. When the Berlin Wall and the Iron Curtain fell at the end of the 20th century, the border between Little and Big Diomede remained closed. Even after the end of the Cold War, access to the neighboring island was restricted. Politics, bureaucracy, and the harsh environment created insurmountable obstacles. Only after the 2000s did Russia and the US begin implementing a program that allowed indigenous people to visit relatives on the opposite island. Formally, this was possible, but in practice, special permits, invitations, and precise calculation of the length of stay were required. Officially, the stay is limited to 90 days. To visit, one must obtain permission from relatives living in designated areas and coordinate the trip with both sides. Even after the border was opened, it remains difficult to cross. Weather and icy conditions in the strait make regular trips rare. Summer navigation is limited, and winter crossings are impossible due to melting ice. These restrictions have turned a short distance of just 2.5 miles into one of the most difficult borders in the world. Today, this line symbolizes the remnants of a tense era. It shows that politics and climate can make even the smallest distance between countries nearly insurmountable. Even with the opening of formal travel opportunities, the strait remains an example of how human and natural factors together shape the last frontier of the Cold War, where two countries are separated not by kilometers but by time, weather, and bureaucracy. When the ice is no longer a bridge. In the past, a solid ice cover used to form between Big and Little Diomede in winter. Local residents used it to cross the strait on foot or by dog sled. The ice was a safe bridge between the islands, allowing people to maintain cultural and family ties. But the climate has changed. In recent decades, stable ice has become increasingly rare, and sometimes it doesn't form at all. The thin edge of the ice can no longer support a person's weight, and even experienced local hunters are forced to abandon their usual routes. The water temperature is rising faster than in other regions of the Arctic. Marine mammals are moving to colder areas. Traditional hunting routes are disappearing. Residents are becoming increasingly dependent on supplies from the mainland, and their traditional way of life is gradually being destroyed. For Little Diomede, this means that crossing between the islands on foot is now almost impossible. Nature has created a barrier where there used to be a simple route. This situation highlights the fragility of life in extreme conditions. Even a small change in climate can completely alter the established way of life, break traditions, and sever the connection between people living just a few miles apart. The ice is no longer a bridge, but a symbol of vanishing familiar freedom and the vulnerability of human communities to changes in nature. A place where time flows differently. Both Diomede Islands have become known to the world not only for their geography, but also for their unique time difference. Because of the location of the international dateline, there is almost a 21-hour difference between Big and Little Diomede. One island lives in tomorrow, the other in yesterday. Tourists and bloggers take advantage of this to jump through time, celebrating New Year's twice or marking the same day twice. This is not a trick, but a real calendar phenomenon. Such a location affects the daily lives of the local residents. Children at school can see the Russian island and know that a new day has already begun there, while for them, yesterday is still going on. Communication and logistics are complicated. When it is day on one island and night on the other, planning trips and deliveries becomes more difficult. People have to take the time difference into account whenever communicating with the mainland or the neighboring island. This feature makes the islands a popular subject for observation and tourist stories. It highlights the uniqueness of the region and shows how geography and international rules can literally divide time. Short distances here turn into unusual time transitions, where a person can feel the difference between day and night in neighboring worlds in just a few minutes of observation. A border that doesn't exist on the map. On the map, the world seems unified, and the Diomede Islands look like tiny dots separated by just 2.5 miles. But in reality, this place carries enormous significance. Geography, history, politics, and climate all come together here in a single unique example. Big Diomede is a Russian military base, while Little Diomede is an American village. Between them lies not only water, but also nearly a full day of time difference, harsh weather conditions, and limited routes. These two islands symbolize the consequences of the Cold War, isolation, and a changing climate. For the locals, the distance seems small, but crossing it is extremely difficult. Natural conditions, icy waters, strong winds, bureaucracy, and the time difference create unique obstacles, turning a short journey into a formidable challenge. Little Diomede lives an almost autonomous life, while Big Diomede remains a closed military zone. The islands show how closely politics, nature, and human life are intertwined. The 2.5 miles between them are more than just geography. They are a symbol of isolation, endurance, and history. Here, distance is measured not only in miles but also in time, conditions, and the lives of people. These islands are a border that doesn't appear on any map but one that everyone feels. And it serves as a reminder of how closely two worlds can coexist while remaining almost completely separated.